what I want to talk about today is what it was like for me before and what happened and what it's like today. And so probably not the best example because today maybe isn't a great day for me in my own recovery. If we're talking about recovery from chaos creating. So one of the things as a chaos creator, I tend to procrastinate. I kind of put things on the back shelf. If there's a task that is maybe a little bit anxiety producing for me, I will avoid it. There's a lot of avoidance, and that's a common codependency trait also. And so what happens for me is that tends to kind of like to kind of spiral, and it gets a little bigger. And so what's happening for me right now is I organize the speakers for this meeting, and haven't been doing a really good job of that. For some reason, that gives me a little bit of anxiety, reaching out and asking people. I don't know what it is. What is it? Am I afraid that they're going to say no? Do I feel like I'm imposing on people? I don't know. There's a whole bunch of things that are underneath it. But what I did is I kind of put it on the back burner and then realized, and then what I'll say is like, oh, I'll just speak. I haven't spoken in a little while. But I didn't give it my best and maybe didn't spend like as much time as I normally would preparing because my thoughts are elsewhere. And instead of being productive and doing the things that I know that I need to be doing, I'm a little bit all over the place. And really that is significant of my disease, if for lack of a better word. I really lose the power of choice when it comes to like my obsessive thinking and controlling, fixing, chaos creating. Once I get going, if I'm not doing the work, if I don't stay in this program, what happens is I go to some pretty dark places, and that's not where I'm at right now. But it was just like really significant for me to see like, oh, this is what happens. Like, and I will keep going. This is like kind of a first early warning sign of, hey, Vikki, what's going on here? So let me just read you something from the big book. So we chaos creators, controller fixers, alcoholics, drug addicts, whatever word you put in there. This is from page 30. We are men and women who have lost the ability to control our thinking, is the word that I put in there. Some of us would put in, we've lost the ability to control our drinking. We've lost the ability to control our using. But for me, I lose the ability to control my thinking. We know that no real excitaholic ever recovers control. All of us felt at times that we were regaining control, but such intervals, usually brief, were inevitably followed by still less control, which led in time to pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization. We are convinced, all of us, that excitaholics of our type are in the grip of a progressive illness. Over any considerable period, we get worse, never better. And that's the truth for me. So if I stay in this place, if I'm not proactive, if I'm not out of denial, if I slip back into that place of denial of like, oh, this isn't actually what's happening. No, I'm fine. I've got this. I'm in control. I know what's happening here. Oh, that was just a little blip. No big deal. I am in the grip of progressive. Like it gets worse and it gets ugly. I can minimize, but it gets really ugly. For someone like me, I become really like The Walking Dead. It's a dangerous place for me to be. For someone who can't control their thinking, thoughts begin to swirl at night. I can't fall asleep. I can't stay asleep. If I wake up at night, I'm not going back to sleep. Thoughts, the shame and the obsessive thinking, like I get hyper sensitive. So everything becomes personal, a personal attack. And I get crippled by my internal like adrenaline. It just really cripples me, this thinking that just gets out of control. So what I know that I need to do is to stay in constant contact with God. And the delusion that I have is, these stories that I tell myself of like, oh, it's really not that bad. You're making a big deal about nothing. You've really got control of this. It's just, and I'll make all these like excuses, oh, it's just that your schedule is really busy. It's just this, it's just that. And the next thing I know, from past experience, I've proven it to myself time and time and time again. Like the next thing I know, I will be crippled again. I will be crippled by my thinking, by my obsessive thinking. So obsessive thoughts are thoughts that exclude or outweigh all other thoughts. And and I think a lot of people who deal with alcoholism or addiction, you can really identify with that. I've talked to food addicts who can really identify with that. And I've always been aware and able to fully understand when it comes to a substance, like, yeah, I totally get it. Or even like, a sex addict or pornography, like, just the mind and the amount of obsession that can happen. For me, it would really show up more relational. It would definitely show up in like replaying conversations, things that and it's always focused for me. Typically it's either focused on the past of, so like what happened, what was this conversation that I had with this person? What did I say? Oh, I should have said it like this. I shouldn't have said it like that. Or it's really focused on the future, fear of what's going to happen, fear of what people think of me, fear of like, are we doing the right thing? There's a lot of fear that comes in. I'm not present in the present. And I'm not able I'm not able to like get myself out of it. So what I have to acknowledge is that I'm not like other people. I don't think like other people. I have to be, really sure, like, am I connecting with God? I slip easily into the delusion that I am. And the reality is that's a growing process. And I'm really thankful. I'm really thankful. I believe that God has a lot of grace and compassion and really longs for relationship with me as much as I long to have a God who really cares about me and cares about my life. I actually really believe that God does care about me and does care about my life. And so, do I have amends that I haven't completed? That's always a great question for me to ask, when I'm kind of like checking myself of like, okay, where am I at? And I'm wanting to like give myself this, oh, I see me going back into old patterns. Like, this is kind of like a checklist that I'm going to give you, that I'm kind of looking at. And this is what my sponsor gave me. So do I have amends that are not completed? Am I working my daily review? Am I taking time to look at today and be honest? Okay, how was today? Like, what happened today? Was I, impatient? Was I selfish? Was I neglectful? Was I honest? Was there any point in my day, this is a nightly review, was there any point in my day where I wasn't honest with myself or with others? As a codependent or an Al-Anon, that's a really important thing for us, for me, because my tendency is to not be honest. And I think, I like to let everybody speak for themselves, but I think all of us can relate to that on different levels of like, am I actually being honest with myself? And am I being honest with others? Do I work intentionally and intensely with others to carry the message. And do I have have I received power to bring these principles into all my affairs? So, and do I see that I have that power into my family, into my occupation? Like, I can actually bring this into all of my affairs. I can be the same everywhere, right? And if I'm trying to like have recovery and then have like my job over here and pretend, it just gets really tricky. So for me, I need to be the same in all of my affairs, with my family, with my friends, in my occupation. Do I see that regardless of how long I have been emotionally sober, that if I answered no to any of these questions, then I presently am in the delusion? And so I think that is, it's vital for me. How quickly I can go back into self-denial and into delusion is shocking. I've seen it in the past, and I'm really at this point not really willing or wanting to go there. I want to be emotionally sober forever. I want to be emotionally sober. That is a goal. And so I think it's really important for me to sit back and say, hey, what's happening? I'm going to read from page 24. The fact is that most chaos creators, for reasons yet obscure, have lost the power of choice and thinking. Our so-called willpower becomes weak and practically non-existent. We are unable at certain times to bring into our consciousness, so into my mind, with sufficient force, the memory of the suffering and humiliation of even a week or a month ago. We are without defense against the next or first obsessive thought. And I think that's always important for me to remember and to revisit that. I can't this isn't just like, I'm going to sail away on this ship to freedom and just go back to being able to live my life however I want, because a lot of the ways that I lived my life is what got me into trouble in the first place. And so, for me, it's good to like ask myself, have I ever experienced a period of emotional sobriety only to crash even harder afterwards? Was I unable to stop because I really didn't want to, or did I want to, but I really couldn't? And, this real place of, I guess, surrender of, I really, I really do want to live a life of freedom. So there's a bunch of things that, sorry, my notes are kind of all over the place, but there's I think for me, recognizing that I'm in a place of fear is a big, it's a big important step, I guess. And then what do I do with that fear? Just realizing like, okay, this is where I'm at. I feel myself slipping. What are the fears? What is happening? And I can fearlessly face the future when I know that I'm actually not walking into the future by myself. And so that's I think the crux of it for me. When I try to take the reins, when I'm trying to run the show, then I get myself like all tied up in knots of fear again. And I actually really believe that there is a power greater than me that has restored me to sanity. And I have access to that power when I do just a few certain simple things. That's also from in the big book on page 50. We do certain simple things. And so it's, these few simple requirements, like, that's actually going to be too much for me to read, but yeah, I think the reality is, like, stuff is going to come up, life is going to happen, and there is a lot that could come at us, but continuing to work a program and stay out of that place of denial and the place where I'm actually deluding myself. I need to, excuse me, be, fearlessly facing, because vagueness and kind of like, I don't know if you can picture, but the kind of that floating through life, when you just like, life just happens to me sometimes. I'm not intentional about it. I see it mostly when I don't look at my calendar. If I'm not paying attention to my calendar and scheduling, and then it becomes like this really vagueness that starts to happen. Vagueness gives me permission to stay in my delusion, and it gives me permission to like let sort of life just happen, and then the anxiety starts to creep in again. I love the idea that I can train my feet and my thinking changes. And so there was, these certain simple things that I started to do. And I don't want to list those because I think it's really important for us to come to those for ourselves, because this isn't this work, this freedom, it doesn't come from like a to-do list. Okay, so if you get up at this time and then you do this and this and this and this and this, it's all going to work out. No, that I had to work out for myself. And I think it has to change and evolve over time too. But there are these certain simple things that the book really gives us and outlines for us. And as I do those things, I'm training my feet and my thinking follows. And fear has less power to separate me then. Fear really likes to separate me from you, separate me from God, separate me from the reality, the truth of where I'm at. And so I have to place myself in that position to be emotionally sober. That's my goal. If my goal is to be emotionally sober forever, I need to place myself in that position. And so, yeah, I think that's really all that I had to share. I feels less helpful than when I was looking over it, but maybe I hope it is. I'm actually that thinking right there is actually part of what's going on with me right now. Is I really start to spin out and think like, oh, actually, I'm not of benefit to others, and that that is part of the fear. That's part of the fear. So that the fact that this is being recorded and that I can listen to it again and pinpoint all those places of like, oh, wow, like fear really does have a grip on me. I think that's important for me to see that and for me to know, because this isn't about me. None of this program, literally none of my life, it's really not about me. I want to live a selfless life and be of benefit to the world around me. And the best way that I can do that is to get out of the way. So thank you for listening.